Calling to order this evening's work session. Today is the first Wednesday of October. We have several presentations and interviews on the agenda, and there will be some votes needing some approvals during this work session as well. Before we get started, could I have our Borough Manager, Ms. Checco, please do roll call.
Yes, we'll note for the record that Councilmember Chmielewski is absent. Councilmember Cerna.
Here.
Councilmember Barton.
Here.
Councilmember Elam.
Here.
Councilmember Fry.
Here.
Vice President Kingsley. Here. President Sokolowski.
Here.
Mayor Aronson.
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, as I said, we'll get started this evening with presentations. We've got a couple presentations. One is swearing in of our fire police officer. So I will invite Mayor Aronson and Adrian Kurtz. Please come up to the podium.
Adrian Kurtz,
Do solemnly swear
that I will support,
obey, and defend the Constitution of the United States
the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of this Commonwealth,
and the Constitution of this Commonwealth,
and that I will discharge
and that I will discharge
the duties of my office
the duties of my office
with fidelity.
with fidelity.
Congratulations.
Thanks, brother. Thank you, brother.
Welcome aboard, Adrian.
Thank you.
All right, our next presentation will be a proclamation recognizing October 20th through the 26th as the Businesswomen's Week. And I will hand over to Mayor Aronson to read the proclamation, please.
Thank you, President Sokolowski. And before I read the proclamation, I do want to bring up, as I often do, an environment that we have in Conshohocken where we have so many amazing female business owners doesn't happen by accident. So I do want to make sure everyone in the audience and at home is aware we have a female vice president, we have a female president, we have a female borough manager who is our top administrative official, female parks and rec director, and staff up and down the borough that are female. So I know we're all very proud of that, and it certainly lays the groundwork to have a business environment like we have in Conshohocken. Okay, now for the proclamation. Whereas Conshohocken was founded on the tenets of fairness, inclusion, and tolerance, and we must continue to pursue those ideals in an ever-changing global economy. And whereas women in Pennsylvania, both past and present, have worked diligently to overcome tremendous obstacles, yet have accepted each challenge with dignity, perseverance, skill, and a passion for success. And whereas women in Conshohocken develop and lead successful businesses, are highly educated, and are trained professionals who distinguish themselves as leaders in specialized and challenging fields. And whereas today, women in the workplace and their allies continue to advocate for programs and policies that will benefit all members of society, including equal pay for equal work, paid sick leave, paid family leave, and equal leadership and advancement opportunities. And whereas these talented, driven individuals are our employers, our most productive and valuable employees, our government and community leaders, our beloved family members, and much more. And whereas we continue to strive for complete equality in business and the workplace, regardless of gender, race, or religion, let us rededicate ourselves to this goal so that future generations may have the doors of opportunity opened even wider for them. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed on this second day of October 2024 that the Borough of Conshohocken wishes to recognize Businesswomen's Week from October 20th to 26th, 2024. The borough encourages all citizens to recognize and celebrate the achievements of working women as they contribute daily to our economic, civic, and cultural livelihood. And with that, I'm going to ask some of our amazing business leaders to join me for a picture with the proclamation.
trying to get this out of the shot. Sorry.
That's okay.
Oh, there we go.
Holly, you should be in there. Okay.
Okay. Thank you all for coming out. That was very nice. All right, next up on our agenda this evening, we have nothing under land use matters, public hearings, and ordinances tonight.
Make the motion to make the proclamation official.
Oh, yeah, there it is.
Sorry.
All right, council, we do have a vote here required. Do I have a motion to approve Proclamation 07-2024, recognizing October 20th to 26th, 2024, as Businesswomen's Week in the Borough of Conshohocken?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. All right, next up on our agenda, we'll be conducting interviews for our board and commission reappointments. I will hand over the reins to Ms. Barton to start the interview process. So first up on the agenda is Holly Holst. Please come up to the podium. And Holly is interviewing for reappointment to the vacancy board.
Hi.
Hi, good evening.
Have you had any?
I have, oh, no, I'm sorry. My mic wasn't on. You're okay with your reappointment? Do you enjoy what you're doing?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. And what has occurred while you were in the position that you have?
Not much on the vacancy board. We have a great council that works together, and I haven't had to step in and do anything, but I'm willing to serve the community if needed.
Good. Any other questions?
Well, Holly, thank you for wanting to come back when there's not much to do.
Yeah.
We do appreciate that.
Yeah. Thank you.
We love it when anybody steps up for anything.
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to be here. Thank you for the opportunity. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, Holly. All right. Next one up, oh, there she is. Marissa, would you mind coming up to the podium? We have Marissa Buck, and she is interviewing for a reappointment for Friends of Conshohocken Parks.
Yeah. Hi.
How are you?
Good. Nice to see you.
Go ahead, Anita.
Yeah. And explain the time to date serving on the board.
Sure. So I started from the Friends, from the Dog Park Committee. I was the head of that for several years, and then once our duties were finished there for the moment, I came on the Friends of Conchi Parks Committee just as a regular board member. Through some other individuals leaving, things like that, I was appointed to treasurer. Been doing that just about the past year or so. It's been, seeing the borough from a different aspect, from the parks aspect, and being involved with you all again in a different capacity has been really interesting and great. It's nice to hear about the parks, the things that we're doing for the parks, the things that we're doing for the community. I own a home here, bought a house about 6 years ago, so right by Sutcliffe Park, very want to be involved in these types of things. It's nice to see us at any of the community events that we're able to be at, raising money. Everybody wants the parks to be, the best of the best, and we continue to hear that. We have the best parks in the area, so we love to do that. So it's been really great to be on the board, and I just hope to continue to be able to do that.
What do you see as your future goals?
Within the park, within the Parks Committee. So continuing to raise those funds, really working with you all to make sure that the improvements that our community is asking for are met. There's all sorts of different needs and wants depending on a family, depending on, the people that we're talking to, but engaging with the community has been really great. We did a really large survey at one of the recent events in the community, got a great feedback on those survey results, and we want to make sure that the members you are all hearing what our community members want and need in the community too. So continuing to do that outreach, expanding our knowledge, the community's knowledge of the parking committee even exists is really big. So hoping to really just continue to get out there and make sure that the voices of our community is heard.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions?
So Marissa, you've been on it for a couple years.
Mhm.
So you are part of kind of the rejuvenation
Yes.
of the Conshohocken Park. Tell us a little bit about the energy around that.
It's been really wonderful. Brian, as the president, has really taken a strong lead and is very influential and aggressive on the things that we've really needed. So the more, I know he's presented to council recently, so we need more of that. We need those individuals that are really involved, that want to make a difference, that want to speak up. So Brian's been great. We continue to add new individuals to the committee as well. We just really need to keep stacking individuals to get that type of volunteer, and just hearing that community outreach is so important. So the more that we can expand, get the knowledge of that out there, even just the knowledge of the parks, knowing, that A field is open for access has been huge. We've heard a lot of great feedback that people can use that track when they didn't know that they could. So just really expanding those things have been really wonderful to see, and just hoping we can continue to do that.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Any specific changes you'd look to make?
Well, I'll always go back to the dogs. I have one. We had, a great committee, a great dog park for a while, get washed away by Ida. So it's not a place for the dog park. So hopefully we can find a place for those dogs to be able to roam freely. We live in a lot and more apartment complexes. It's hard for people to, take their dogs to just walk on a trail or a sidewalk. Being able to run a little bit is really something that our community does need. So if we're able to somehow work with even a residing community to together form something, it would be really nice to be able to have. Would love to see that. Even just more about the parks that we can then work together, council and our committee, to then get that on social media more, events that are happening, upgrades that we're seeing, understanding why the upgrades are being done before people see them live. Things like that would be the type of improvements that I'd hope to see in the future.
Anyone else?
I just want to say that I appreciate this move towards, getting out more information about the parks, and especially how people can get involved with them. I know that, I think it was Brian who was in here who gave us a presentation, mentioned an old program, an already established program that I actually saw on Facebook. Someone was interested, which was like the Sponsor a Bench program,
Yeah.
which is something like I think could really use a lot of promotion,
Yeah.
especially as we continue to add parks. They currently broke ground on the one next to Santander, and we have ones coming in right on Fayette as you enter.
The pocket parks,
So
yeah.
I think those sorts of programs where people might be interested in leaving a mark on Conshohocken would be really helpful to promote.
Yeah, I think that'd be really exciting. We'll have to limit the number of benches because I think we'll all want one, but I think it'd be still a really great way to get people involved in our community. And, then you're driving people to those areas too that are less used and things like that.
And you forgot the Raymond Wyman one is also underway.
The ring.
Ludwig one. Yeah, the Ludwig Raymond Wyman, you are correct. Well, thank you.
Yes. Thank you, everyone.
Brenda, do you have
Marissa,
any
while we have you under the bright lights here, I just want to thank you for being flexible. I know we've sort of had different iterations of these committees, and you've always stepped up in a bunch of different capacities, so thank you.
Absolutely. It's wonderful to work with you all, so I appreciate your own flexibility and, acceptance of us all too. So thank you.
Okay. Next interview, we're going to ask Kathleen to host. It'll be Tyler Dunphy. Would you mind coming up to the podium? Tyler is interviewing for the zoning hearing board. Yes, zoning hearing board.
Sorry.
Hi, Tyler. Thanks for coming in. How long have you actually been on the zoning hearing board?
So believe it or not, already 3 years, which
Wow.
it seems like it flew. I feel like I was just back here like last week. So
Yes.
yeah, it's been a wonderful time, especially in Conshohocken right now where there's so much development and expansion. It's become an exceedingly important board to kind of balance the interests of the applicants with adherence to the code and kind of keeping the integrity of the neighborhood and while listening to the neighbors that come. And I mean, Rick's back here as well. I mean, we have had some packed houses recently and kind of navigating those competing interests sometimes. I'm very fortunate to serve on a board with as much institutional knowledge as we have, especially as the board becomes exceedingly important in the expansion and development of the borough.
And I think that you guys are doing a great job. What do you think is the toughest decision when you're looking at the interest of the person who wants to develop his or her property and the neighbors that
Yeah, I
don't
mean,
want it?
I think it's really important. I think the push and pull is adhering to the code and adhering to the legal standards as well that we are bound to follow in terms of granting a variance or a special exception, and also hearing the neighbors out and trying to, while still carrying out our jobs, see if there's common cause or middle ground in how we might, if we grant a variance that is contested or disputed, seeing how we might be able to work into that variance that we grant some conditions that might also satisfy some of the, folks in the audience with party status and trying to find that middle ground.
And what do you see coming up? I mean, parking's always the biggest issue in the borough.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's parking, and I think it's also, the increase in business that wants to come
Right.
here, especially business in some of the residentially zoned areas. I think parking, and those two also overlap too,
Yeah.
right? So, because businesses need to provide parking, there's already a parking struggle, and so there's a push and pull there. So I think it's parking generally, but I think it's also the increase of business into Conshohocken, which in theory is a great thing, but we need to make sure that we're doing it in accordance with the code and also kind of listening to the neighbors, what they have to say about business coming into their neighborhood. And, we have a couple cases right now that don't want to go into too much because they're active cases, but are dealing with just that, so.
And how do you are actually an attorney, correct?
I am, yeah.
And how do you think that helps you to decide some of these cases?
Yeah, so I think it helps ground me in that, even though we're a quasi-judicial board, we still have to follow what the law says. And of course, we have a wonderful solicitor in Alex Glassman who helps us stay grounded because there are some attorneys on their board and there are some, non-attorneys as well. And I think being an attorney, it grounds me kind of in the code. But I think you also have to be able to listen to the folks that are your neighbors or party status that, they might, that the code doesn't necessarily say, oh, here's how you consider party status folks and, what their concerns are. So I think being an attorney helps, but it's not the full package.
How about anybody else have any thing for Tyler?
Yeah, why are you interested in returning to the board?
Yeah.
I mean, I have a great time. I really do. I think it's an important role. I'm humbled to be on it. Like I said, it's a great group of folks. Getting to see them once a month and sometimes twice a month, depending on how many cases. But I think it's making a difference in the community. I get to meet more of my neighbors. I live right over on West 3rd. I get to see people that might be walking around with their dogs and hear what they have to say about certain cases. So it really makes me feel in touch with the community and also kind of helps drive the direction of the borough, which is I feel humbled to be able to do. So,
Anybody else?
Kudos to you guys. Those are marathon sessions.
Yeah.
I've sat in on a few of them, and I've made it most of the way through. The only question I really have for you is, you are an attorney. Do you think there's any, could there potentially be any perceived conflicts of interest moving forward with yourself being on the zoning hearing board, even if they're not real perceived by the public?
yeah, not at least with me because I'm in-house, so I'm not even in private practice, and I'm in-house at a healthcare company, so like I would never be doing like land development or anything like that. So I think I'm pretty, never want to be 100% conflict free, but I think I'm about as conflict-free as you can get because I'm in-house, I don't have a private practice, and I would never be in kind of land development, municipal work, any of that.
So just about everything that comes in front of you,
Yeah.
you'd be able to make a judgment on,
Yep,
for
and
the
if,
most
and if
part.
not, I would gladly step aside. There have been instances where my former, when I was in private practice, my former firm has been either represented by one of the parties, and I've consulted our solicitor, or made sure that I was able to participate in that. So as an attorney, that is one thing that helps, is we are acutely aware with conflicts of interest, and we have our own code of ethics, which applies whether we're in the office or not. So definitely would be acute to that, but I don't think I would encounter it.
So
Thanks.
Tyler, this is your first Board of Commission seat in your career?
It is, yeah.
So what would you say to folks who are contemplating joining boards and commissions in Conshohocken? You took on a pretty busy board, right? What advice or words of wisdom would you have?
Yeah, I'd say just, I mean, because my prior practice was labor and employment, and so I had a little bit of municipal exposure. I would just say kind of jump into it, and then once you are into it, listen to the folks that have been around, and that's the best way to learn. So I would say don't be afraid to get involved, even if it's not something you're totally familiar with, because I think it does make a difference. You can learn a lot, you can meet a lot of great people, and then once you are in, I think the secondary part of that is don't feel like you need to be the loudest voice in the room, listen to those around you, learn, and that's how I've kind of soaked it up like a sponge the past couple of years, because there's a lot of folks that have been on way longer than I have, and kind of knowing the ins and outs, the nuances. There are a couple players that we see regularly, and getting familiarized with them and their idiosyncrasies is, I think, two-part answer.
Great, thank you.
I just have one more. Do you, because I've been in some of those meetings, do you feel like you have the ability as a zoning hearing board to efficiently move through everything, or do you think there's ways you could all improve upon the efficiency by which you render decisions? Do you think there's any room for improvement there?
That's a good question. I think there's always room for improvement because we're, far from perfect. I think we do run a pretty tight meeting, especially when we have, 8, 9, 10 cases. At some points, we have to kind of get Alex involved and kind of hush the crowd a little bit otherwise, because, these do get contentious sometimes, so you've seen it. So I think it's a lot. The procedural aspect of it, I think, is run very well, and that's a big credit to Rick and Alex. I think it's just sometimes controlling the, peanut gallery, for lack of a better word, because everybody is going to get their chance to speak whether they have a party status or not, and Alex is very good about ensuring that that happens. But it's like sometimes the parties have kind of gone at it in the gallery. So I think it's kind of getting the gallery to allow us to move more efficiently, and maybe we could do a better job at that.
Anybody else?
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Tyler. Okay, and last interview for this evening, Mr. Rick Barton, would you mind coming to the podium?
Good evening.
Rick.
Thank you.
It's been a few hours since we saw each other last.
It is.
You have been on the board since 2003, is that correct?
That sounds about right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Cool.
Yeah.
And are you still as enthusiastic as you were when you first
Yeah,
started?
I do enjoy it. It's been a great team of people to work with. Tyler has brought a lot of new energy the last couple of years to the board. Brittany keeps us on track. It's challenging because the last year or two, I don't think we've had a month where we had fewer than 5 cases a meeting. So that's a very high volume for a local zoning board. But thanks to Brittany and Alex and Allison Lee, our zoning officer, I think that we do a pretty good job. It is not always as efficient as you'd like it to be, but sometimes that's the nature of the beast too. It depends on the controversy involved. If it's a difficult case, not to get into too much detail, but we've been dealing with 5 Caldwell Lane for over a year. We're at a point of decision now on that one, thankfully. But, sometimes that does happen. But no, I still have enthusiasm for it. I appreciate the chance to be involved with it. And, I made a career in zoning and planning, so this is all related to it. So it's been a good step for me to stay involved.
And that answers the next question as to why you want to sign up again. So you do obviously have great people to work with. Tyler seems very enthusiastic.
Yeah, Tyler's one of our newer members, and
Right.
then David Bria came aboard. He took Alan Chomlewski's seat this past year. Also, let's see, Mark Danik is our vice chair, and Marlo Doman. And again, I'm the only non-lawyer there, so I'm surrounded by lawyers, right? But it works out, you know.
Does anybody else like to ask some questions?
This is kind of just for my own personal edification. What would you say were, because you've been on the board for 20 years now, what would you say were some of the priorities when you first started versus what your priorities or like focuses are now?
I would say the priorities early on dealt with development along the riverfront, because that's when a lot of the new office buildings and commercial buildings were being constructed. And they're all in the floodplain, you know that. So it was a really, some difficult cases there in how do you balance property interests with your zoning code and then trying to make the development as safe as possible. So that really was the highlight, and I think the emphasis in the early years. Today, Tyler mentioned, more and more businesses now want to be in the residential neighborhoods. And it's almost as if we're going back to an earlier version of Conshohocken, where you had corner stores and, cleaners here and there. And when I moved here in 1987, there were 3 private pharmacies within the borough limits, and they're all gone now. They've been replaced by CVS and the supermarkets, up the road. But it seems like, these smaller businesses want to be where the people are, right in the neighborhood. So again, you have to balance all those issues of parking for sure, but also hours of operation. Are there noise issues? So that's challenging.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you for your service.
Pleasure to be here. When Brittany sent me an email about a new term, and I said, how about if we just extend it 1 year? Because my wife will be finishing on council in December of next year, and I figured it's a good time for me to move on too. So I'll look forward to the next year.
Rick, I just have a question for
Yeah.
you and for the team. So a few years ago, we asked zoning about ordinances and challenges with our ordinances, and we did some modifications of ordinances to make zoning a little bit easier for you guys to be able to make determinations. If I were to ask that same question today, are there still ordinances out there that cause log jams in the work that you're doing that could be re-looked at? What would your feedback be?
I'll give you a couple of ideas, but that's a great question, and I think it's something that deserves longer thought than I can give you tonight. I think parking standards need to be looked at, because the way most communities have set parking requirements in the past, that's beginning to change, particularly in smaller urban areas. Basically, we're trying to get less parking required on sites than more. And especially in a walkable borough like Conshohocken, there's ways around parking where you don't have to expect the same volume that you may have expected 50 years ago or even 40 years ago. And then non-conforming uses is always a big issue for zoning. Because of the age of the buildings in our borough, many houses are non-conforming with the current zoning code, which means that anytime somebody wants to put on a deck or a porch or expand a bedroom, 9 times out of 10, they have to come to the zoning board to do that. And many of these projects are relatively minor. So if we can look at that part of the code, non-conforming buildings, and perhaps change that so that fewer buildings would be non-conforming in the future, that would relieve people of having to come before the zoning board before they get a building permit.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anybody else? Well, thanks, Rich.
Rick,
Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Sorry,
Yeah.
you've been here since '03.
Yeah.
And you've seen everything kind of, there's more cases in front of you now than
Sure.
you've ever seen. Does the zoning hearing board, you're obviously the president of it, do they feel overwhelmed at all with the volume and what they have to take in? And are they getting the proper support both internally and externally, in your opinion?
I think we are getting the support. Sometimes it is a little overwhelming, the volume of cases. But it's not something that we don't manage. And the reality is, we may have 10 cases on an agenda. More times than not, a couple of those cases are going to request to be continued to a future date.
Sure.
So, and it can be that the attorney can't make it that night, or, you know, they want to talk to a neighbor. We had a case recently on a property near the Polish Catholic Church on West Elm Street. And they had a property issue with the church. They came in front of us, the priest was here, and he was going to object to the case. And Alex suggested, listen, can the two of you just kind of talk this over privately? Come back next month. And they did. They worked out their differences. They came back next month. That hearing only took 5 or 10 minutes. So that's an example of sometimes there's ways to get through these cases if you understand what the issues are.
Sure. Well, thank you for doing it.
You're welcome.
The amount of time you've kind of, that's impressive.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Well, thanks for coming in, Rich.
Okay?
Thank you.
See you.
Thank you all for your service. They're important positions in the borough, and we are a good borough because we have good people like you guys helping point us in the right directions. All right, moving on the agenda, we are going to move to manager matters. First item, we will discuss the bids that we received for the RFP for the engineering services for our 2023 CDBG Curb Ramp Project. Steph, would you mind reviewing the bid tabulations?
Of course. We did release an RFP for the installation of 8 curb ramps at different locations around the borough. We will be using the federal dollars through the CDBG program for that. The RFP, there was 4 responses to the RFP. Those firms were Gilmore and Associates, Remington and Vernick Engineers, Herbert Rowland and Grubeck, HRG, and Acor Construction LLC. The Community Development Coordinator, Christine Stetler, put a bid tabulation together based off the results and the responses to the RFP, which included experience, qualifications, time frame for the project itself, the cost, and any additional comments based off of the stipulations in the RFP. The federal procurement requirements require that the borough accept not only the lowest bid, but the lowest responsible bid for the service. That's why we look at all of those factors, including timeframe qualifications and specifics of the project that we need to ensure each entity will be able to satisfy. Based off of the results of the RFP, the recommendation is to award the project to Gilmore and Associates, who submitted a not to exceed cost of $30,585. This also included the PennDOT road opening permit costs. I'll note for the record that Acor Construction did come in at a not to exceed cost of $24,000. However, the firm did not identify reimbursable costs. There was no number of hours work provided, and therefore we couldn't calculate cost per hour. And the cost of the PennDOT road opening permit was not included. And therefore, Acor Construction was removed from consideration, and we went with the recommendation is then to award to the next responsible lowest bidder, which would be Gilmore and Associates. It is important to note that there is no fiscal impact for this project on the borough's budget, since they are all generated from the CDBG contract, which is federal funds. So the full cost of the engineering for the installation of the 8 curb ramps will be coming from the federal funds and not out of the borough budget. There is no vote on this item this evening. It is just a discussion item, so if you have any additional questions, you can feel free to ask them now, or you can ask over the next 2 weeks, and it will appear back on your agenda on October 16th for consideration.
Any questions related to the RFP process or recommendation from Chris Stetler? Okay.
And I will also just note that the bid tabulation and the final approval by Borough Council does need to go back to the CBG staff, and they will review the decision as well.
Great, thank you. All right, hearing no additional questions or concerns, we'll move on to the next item, which is discussing a first amendment to the Conshohocken Borough's Community Shuttle Service Contract. So Steph, would you like to talk about the first addendum?
Yes, I'm going to keep going. So the Conshohocken Cab, it launched in February of 2024. And as you are aware, it is a shuttle which moves on a loop throughout the borough. It is a 14-passenger shuttle. It provides access to entertainment, dining, large residential complex shopping, the train station. And the goal of the cab was to improve quality of life for the borough residents by reducing single occupancy vehicles in the borough of Conshohocken. We are gearing up for end of fiscal year 2024. Last week, we went through our budget meeting, which included all capital and operating expenditures that were proposed for the 2025 fiscal year. In that proposed budget, we did include year 2 of the shuttle program contract that we managed through GVF and their partner Transnet. We do, as a administration, believe that the first year of service was a success in terms of launching, engaging businesses, residents, visitors. We do have lower shuttle rider numbers than we would like at this point, and therefore we have made some changes to the operating schedule for evening hours, eliminating some of the loop spots. We continue to monitor that in partnership with GVF and Transnet. And then we are engaged in conversations with some businesses in terms of marketing efforts, et cetera, to try to get the word out about the Concha Cab and what service it provides to the community. So Borough Administration is recommending year 2 of the program. It is in your fiscal 2025 budget. We did present that information last week. And to move forward with that, we do require an addendum, the first addendum to the shuttle program contract. And it will, again, be on your agenda for October 16th. That way, if there's any input from the public or from Borough Council, we can gather that over the next 2 weeks prior to consideration.
So Steph, remind us how the public can share their input related to the shuttle?
They can always reach out to their ward representative, and that ward representative usually forwards them on to administration so we can make sure that feedback gets to all of Borough Council. They also are more than welcome to send any feedback to administration. The easiest way is to go through Brittany or I, and then we make sure all of that feedback goes to Borough Council. We send information to full Borough Council and Mayor every Friday. So any feedback relative to that specific item would be included and packaged, especially as we move into consideration for the addendum on the 16th.
So they can just call the main number?
They can call the main number. They can email me directly. All of my contact information is on the website. But if they'd like to just call the 610-828-1092 and ask for me, they can go. That works as well.
Thank you.
I know that the goal of it is to, reduce single occupancy vehicles in the borough of Conshohocken. I guess my question is, do we still believe that it should be the primary goal relative to, obviously we mentioned ridership numbers are low, the cost to operate it is not insignificant. Even if it were to serve an underserved population, meaning the seniors, is there any thought on pivoting because I see it as something that would be of high value to our senior citizens, And I don't know if it's designed particularly for that, or if that should be one of the goals that's within this. Because I don't know if the single occupancy vehicles may be an offshoot of this, but I don't know if it'll reduce it, that should be the primary goal of it after seeing kind of the first year of it and who's using it. Is there,
Yeah, so we are evaluating all options. We did recently have meetings with senior populations at different locations throughout the borough to gauge interest, needs, wants. And so as it continues to evolve, which is why we are recommending a second year of the shuttle, the main objective of the shuttle may evolve as well. But right now we are sticking with that original goal, which was to target the apartment complexes, basically give the concept that you can have a car or not have a car, and get throughout the borough, get to work. If you live in the apartments down by the river, you can hop on the train and get where you need to go, or you can hop on the shuttle and get where you need to go. You basically can either park your car and not have to use it, or not have a car.
sorry, but do we know what the ridership is out of those apartment complexes
We have it broken down. GVF provides a ridership report on a monthly basis. And if you look at that report, if you look at the stops, there's a breakdown of who's actually riding it, and then you look at the ridership by location. And you do have the Birch, the Lumina, the Riverwalk, the Sora West, Madison West Elm, and they are utilizing the shuttle, just not to the extent that we would like them to. So yes, the long answer to your question is year 2 is a continued evaluation of how best to utilize the shuttle.
Have we advertised a lot in those apartment buildings?
It has been advertised extensively. I do know that GVF is gearing up for an additional round of marketing directly targeting all of the apartment complexes in the Borough of Conshohocken. So we are working with them on that next round of outreach.
Anyone else have any other questions? Okay, great. Thank you, Steph.
Thank you.
All right, next item we'll be discussing is a third amendment to the lease agreement with Washington Fire Company. Steph, you're on.
I'm up again. In 2021, the Borough and Washington Fire Company started a lease agreement, and that lease is for approximately 4,000 square feet on the first floor of the firehouse, and the Borough utilizes it for storing emergency services apparatuses, vehicles, equipment, rescue boats, etc. Basically, everything that our emergency management team uses, especially pertaining to the river. We would like to continue that partnership with Washington Fire Company and extend that lease agreement for an additional 2 years. The Washington Fire Company has also requested that the relationship continue. So this has been discussed. It's now in front of you for consideration. So it would be a 2-year extension until December 31st of 2026. And that lease agreement is for $50,000 annually. And that is built into your 2025 budget.
Any questions on extending the lease agreement with Washington Fire Company?
And again, not a decision item for this evening, so if there is any additional feedback, you can, just like with the shuttle, you can forward it along and we'll make sure it gets out to all of our elected officials prior to taking a vote. God bless you.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to the next item, we will be considering to approve a resolution 2024-21 supporting the Pennsylvania Commission for the United States Semiquincentennial America 250.
Yes.
You were challenging me with that one.
You should have seen me all week practicing in my office. And then Stacy was with the 175. I'm like, now I'm going to be all messed up.
75 is, and that's going to be a mouthful too.
So you're going to say it?
I was like, there's another quincentennial name I'm gonna have to practice. No,
Yes.
but basically Montgomery County is encouraging all 62 municipalities that make up Montgomery County to join our local leaders in passing the America 250 PA resolution. This commission is through the state. It was established in 2018 to plan, encourage, develop, and coordinate the commemoration of the 250th anniversary of the founding of the United States. And this resolution basically is Conshohocken is supporting that effort. And so this is for consideration this evening, so that it can be passed along to our county officials and they can include Conshohocken in the list of municipalities who have signed a resolution.
Any questions on the resolution? All right, hearing no questions, do I have a motion to approve Resolution 2024-21, supporting the Pennsylvania Commission for the United States Semiquincentennial America 205?
I'll make that motion.
I have a motion
I'll second it.
and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion carries. All right, the next 4 items on the agenda also are looking for motions. So first up is to consider approving 720 Spring Mill Avenue Financial Security Escrow Release Number 4 in the amount of $70,814.90. Looking for a motion.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Next up is consider approving Matson Mill Financial Security Escrow Release Number 2, the final release, in the amount of $11,600.
Make that motion.
I'll second.
A motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Next item is to consider approving Matson Mill Maintenance Bond Release in the amount of $230,233.35.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Next item is consider approving change order number 2 for the 2024 Liquid Fuels Road Program. Do I have a motion to approve the change order number 2 for 2024 Liquid Fuels?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Oh, we have a couple more. Next item up for a motion is to consider approving payment certificate number 3 for the 2024 Liquid Fuels Road Program. So I need a motion to approve the certificate number 3 for the Liquid Fuels Road Program to Scott Building Corporation in the amount of $138,752.18.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Next item is to consider approving a tuition reimbursement for Officer Montowski for the 2025 spring semester. Officer Montowski is asking for the amount of $1,500 plus the cost of books as per the CBA. Could I have a motion to approve?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Next item is to consider approving a payment certificate number 3 for the Sutcliffe Park Stormwater BPM project. Looking for a motion to approve certificate number 3 in the amount of $368,264.59 to Mako Constructors for the Sutcliffe Park Stormwater BPM project, subject to the borough's receipt of a completed certified payroll.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion carries. All right, good work, everyone. Next item on the agenda is a discussion on the design of the Borough of Conshohocken welcome sign I will invite the Executive Director of Operations to the table to discuss the revised rendering for the Welcome to Conshohocken sign.
Sean is here too, in case there's any conflicts. Interest. So the last time I talked about this, I don't think it went well as far as the design of the sign.
Put it bluntly.
I just cut to the chase, and so we looked at different. I think what we got back from the council was that they wanted something a bit more fancy, structured, rather than just a plain sign. So this is another design that they came up with. Is this the one? Mm-hmm. So this is more on the lines of what we talked about, was having the seal as the main part of the sign, and incorporating as much as we could. We still were allowed to put the established 1850 in there, and again, since we're going to celebrate that next year, I think it's important to have it. So as far as what we took back from the council with this, we think it's a little more in line with what we were looking at, or what you were looking at after the last discussion. If there's any changes, any additions that you want to it, or anything that you like or don't like about it, I think this is the time to discuss it. The location, that is, you're trying to get me like seasick? So the location of the sign is something, no matter what you choose, is going to be somewhat variable. We have to deal with the height of the sign based on the location we're going to put it alongside that hill. So the one issue we have is that used to be a roadway, and it was a lot of other things. So we found old tracks underneath there. There's a blacktop concrete underneath there. So rather than getting into a big construction project, we might have to move it to the left, to the right, forward or back, depending on what we hit when it's done. And then obviously the engineering as far as the height and weight of the sign to make sure that it's safe. But it will go more towards the bridge rather than the location that it was before, and more towards the middle of the bridge rather than towards the end of the bridge. So when you're coming into town, that's what you would say. I think years ago there was a rendering from a company that wanted to put an electric sign, like a highway sign there, and they chose the location almost at the same spot because of it.
Any questions or comments or feedback to the staff related to the new design?
It's hard to see there, but this sign is 12 feet wide, as opposed to the last one we showed you was less than half of this width. The first rendering that they sent back to us with this layout was only 10 feet wide. We actually asked for it to be made even larger based upon feedback given by, I think, all of you last time we discussed the sign.
I really like the prominence of the borough's name. I think it is like one of our most unique points, our name itself. So I do like how big and wide it is.
Makes it easier to spell when it's that big.
And there will be lighting as well. It's hard to see in this rendering, but there is lighting included in this package.
Backlighting?
I think it's actually like a floodlight in front of it, shining up onto it.
And the lighting portion of this, again, along with where the location is and the pole that's going to hold it, we can change that, and we can change the lighting before, we can change the lighting after, depending on what they have. So there's a lot of different things out there. There's LEDs that can light the entire thing up, outline it. I think that based on the background that's there, with all the other buildings, it might be a little gaudy with having that done, but it will be lighted appropriately. The company that we're dealing with this has done numerous jobs throughout the Borough of Conshohocken. In fact, most of the signs that you see in the location are done by them. And you know, they have a better idea than we could ever come up with what the look should be. If it's too much, if it's too little. And if they need to change it, they're not shy about changing it because they don't like the look. They have a very good reputation.
I think I like it. I remember seeing the other one and I was like, like it was fine. Yeah, it was like.
We gave you a little bit
Yeah,
of
it
a
was
hard
that- yeah.
time with the
Yeah,
first
Shauna came up.
I did have the sign vendor go onto our website and watch that portion of the meeting before submitting this. Because I wanted him to know exactly what the feedback was. So I think that was helpful.
No, I think it's nice that they get the like Adrian said, the seal and the prominence of the name is really cool. So much.
And remember, we have to figure out a way to put a similar sign on the other end of town after we do some of our construction or get some of the things that we want to get done there. So I think something like that, even if we made it smaller, would still have a prominent appearance.
It seems like, I don't want to say modern, but clean without being too modern, I guess.
Gaudy.
Sure, yeah. I think if Conshohocken would have had like cursive lettering or anything, that would have been really hard to read.
I think the shape is nice too, and I like that it says the Borough of. Like, we are important, like this is the place you want to be, and I like how that is in the bannering above Conshohocken too.
And borough.
Yes.
We're a borough, guys.
That's correct.
Did you say the lighting could be added later, or did they recommend initially doing the lighting?
There is going to be some type of lighting. It might
Okay.
not, I think the problem with lighting is, and this has happened in multiple locations in town with some of the bigger buildings, that sometimes it's too much and sometimes it's not enough. And they're a company, like if you deal with some companies, it is, what you've paid for is what you've gotten. But if they, and trust me when I tell you, the person that we deal with this, he's gonna come across that bridge at 11 o'clock at night, and he's gonna say, oh, no, that doesn't work. We have to change it.
Yeah, that was kind of what I was driving at, because you didn't want to add something that maybe we regretted adding initially, and then like.
Electric, the capability, because it's LED, it doesn't take a lot of electric.
Yeah.
So the capability of adding it, we are gonna encompass that in whatever the pole, it's actually the pole that's gonna be the big thing. So we will definitely encompass that in any kind of pole or attachment, so we can add on or take away or whatever it turns out. If it's not as appealing as everybody thought it was gonna be, it can also be changed in several years if that's what. I mean, the infrastructure part of this, getting the lighting in, getting the pole up, and getting the first sign that's ever been there is probably the biggest part of it.
Any other feedback?
We can't have the recording playing how to say the name properly.
Like
Conshohocken. Conshohocken. Yeah.
We can have the drones fly over the bridge as we come into town.
What are those little QR codes?
Yeah.
Take a picture and hear it spelled out.
Yeah.
Well, we can actually put that on the.
Oh my
We
gosh.
can actually put that on the lower part of the.
Didn't we create a welcome to, or a Conshohocken video last year or something? Depending on how current that is, that wouldn't be a bad little addition that people could scan and see the video about our borough.
We will make it high enough where that's a possibility underneath, where you have where you can attach the QR code. I've actually seen that somewhere, where you attach the QR. Yeah. So I know I've seen it somewhere. The only problem is if the drivers are the ones trying to get it.
Yeah.
I don't know, everybody's got a phone in their hand driving the cars.
Yeah.
Sorry, Dave.
I like this version a lot.
Nice job.
Okay, so we have
Stringer
authority
lights
to
and
move forward with this sign.
Yes.
Yes. Do we have to vote, or would it?
Vote.
Okay.
No vote, it's already approved in the budget, you just need to approve the actual sign. Giving us the approval, then we have our marching orders.
Okay.
You have approval to move forward.
Thank you.
Thank
thanks.
you.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks.
Thanks for all your hard work.
Thanks for also dealing with the vendor.
All right. Moving on, we
we are at our legal matters section. I have a few items here. So the first item is to discuss a resolution setting procedural rules for compliance with the Pennsylvania Right to Know law. Mr. Peters, would you like to help us along with this discussion?
Sure, yeah. So you've always had the right to adopt rules and procedures under the Pennsylvania Right to Know law. If you don't, it just reverts back to the Right to Know law, and the borough's never had an issue with that, frankly. Recently, there have been requests on a local and also statewide basis from one entity in particular, and they, as a general matter, refuse to do two things. One, they refuse to use an actual form. So they'll try to just submit an email to the borough and expect us to interpret it as a right to know law request. And two, they have a system whereby the document that's submitted appears to be from an individual or an organization where it's not actually coming from. It's actually an anonymous request when it comes in the door. So the reason this came up at all, just so you know, was to do two things. One, clarify that you have to submit an actual form when it comes in to the Borough of Conshohocken, and two, that the borough does not accept anonymous requests. A big part of the reason you're allowed not to accept anonymous requests is because you need to know who you're sending it to, because they have an appeal right on the back end. Aside from that, the only clarifications we're making that aren't already set forth in the Right to Know law are that when borough records are being inspected, a member of borough staff must be there. We do that now as a matter of course, so there's no major change there. And also that the records will be produced in the medium in which they exist. Again, there's nothing different there from what we do currently. It's just putting it in a set of procedures. So everything else in here, as you read through, you'll find simply matches what the Right to Know law already says. It just gives requesters a one-stop shop so they don't have to actually go to the statute to look at how we handle requests. So that is, I guess, the primary basis for the resolution and why it's being considered. Again, you've never had an issue with this. However, you have had requests come in from this entity that I spoke of previously. In the circumstance where you had the request come in, they actually had used the form, so that wasn't an issue there, but this would resolve it if it is an issue, because the first thing the Office of Open Records asks is, did you have that policy on your website? So once this is adopted, it'll go up on the borough's website, and then when I'm responding to those appeals, I can say yes, and here's the URL to get there. So I can answer any questions you might have.
Mike, what does the actual Right to Know law say about anonymous requests?
That the borough can choose to accept them or not.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's why having an actual policy in place allows staff to take the position, no, the borough does not accept anonymous requests, instead of saying, the Right to Know law doesn't require us to accept anonymous requests. I, as the open records officer, am making the decision to not accept anonymous requests. It should be coming from council and the mayor, what the borough's policy is in that regard.
Any other questions?
Is there already a form to be filled out?
Yeah, great question. We just use the state's form, and we'll continue to do so, yeah.
Any more?
And this is up for consideration at your October 16th meeting, right, Steph?
Correct.
So I can answer any questions between now and then, and if you're interested in more details on that requester, we can also discuss those, but we don't need to get into it here.
Can we charge for someone who repeatedly asks for stuff?
Yeah, great question. The answer is no. Yeah, so.
That didn't get passed, huh?
No, you have to change, you charge the same fee each time to each requester regardless of identity.
Okay.
Yep.
Any other? Okay, so it'll be in our October 16th for a vote. Thank you. Next item is to consider approving a deed of dedication for the Oak Street Rail Crossing. Mr. Peters?
Sure. So I told you when we talked about 51 Washington that it was likely that we'd have a few other cleanup items in that part of the borough. This is a perfect example of one of those. You accepted the Oak Street crossing for dedication. You opened it. You satisfied the Public Utility Commission's requirements. The back end of that is making sure we do a deed of dedication, so it's officially recorded as being part of the borough's road system, so you can then submit it to PennDOT to get the liquid fuels money for that little stretch. So this is for your consideration this evening. You actually already authorized doing this. We're just bringing it to your attention again and also informing you that Steph's going to actually execute this document. So if you're inclined this evening, it would be a simple motion to approve the deed of dedication. Steph would execute it, and then I have to track down someone from PennDOT to sign it. So that'll be the battle here. Not that they won't want to sign it, just that we have to find the person to sign it. So.
Any additional questions? All right, hearing no questions, do I have a motion to approve the deed of dedication for the Oak Street Rail Crossing?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Next item is to consider approving business matters related to the dedication and land swap for the realignment of Washington Street in the area of 51 Washington Street land development. Mr. Peters.
Okay, so we talked about this quite a bit at your prior two meetings. As you know, there is a small portion of Washington Street as it is now aligned and in existence today that crosses over into the 51 Washington Street property. It was always planned that we would do the deed of dedication at the tail end after it was actually built to confirm that the as-built conditions match the area being dedicated. Karen and her team have carefully confirmed that those areas do match. You authorized advertisement at your last meeting. We were able to get the advertisement in, and it is before you this evening for a vote to accept the first action item, to accept dedication of the portion of Washington Street located on the 51 Washington property.
Any questions, Mr. Peters?
Yeah. I'm sorry if I wasn't clear. The first thing you do is you adopt an ordinance which accepts dedication. So it's adoption of ordinance 05-2024 if you're inclined.
All right, hearing no questions, do I have a motion to adopt the ordinance 05-2024 accepting the dedication and opening of the area of land associated with 51 Washington Street as a portion of the borough's street system?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Motion carries.
Next, just like we just did for Oak Street, now that you've accepted dedication, the next item is to approve the deed of dedication, dedicating that area of Washington Street to the borough, and that's the document whereby 51 Washington will actually transfer an interest to the borough. And that is up for a vote this evening as well.
Any questions on the deed of dedication for Washington Street? Hearing no questions, do I have a motion to approve the deed of dedication dedicating an area of Washington Street to the Borough of Conshohocken as part of the borough's street system?
Make that motion.
I'll second.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion carries.
The next item is to consider approving a quitclaim deed for a land swap associated with 51 Washington Street. So going back to the road realignment, in order to realign the road, we needed property from both SEPTA and from 51 Washington. The SEPTA property was given to the borough, but the SEPTA actually gave us more property than we needed, which included the property that is the driveway going into the 51 Washington property. So in consideration of, or as a swap of the land that they're giving us for the roadway, this quitclaim deed would give them the land that forms their driveway entrance. It is not intended to be, nor should it be part of the borough street system. So this quitclaim deed would give to 51 Washington Street their driveway area.
Any questions on the quitclaim deed? Hearing no questions, do I have a motion to approve the quitclaim deed for the land swap associated with 51 Washington Street land development.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion carries.
And then the last item is, these dedication issues were the remaining issues for which financial security was being held for 51 Washington Street. So the next motion would be to approve release number 4, the final release, in the amount of $282,582.23. And you should condition that on 51 Washington delivering an executed copy of the deed of dedication.
Is this the last action for 51 Washington Street? Do we have any other
There will
outstanding?
be a maintenance bond release and then a final professional services escrow release.
Okay.
And then that project will
And it'll
be
be
closed out.
Okay.
Any other questions related to 51 Washington Street? Hearing no questions, do I have a motion to approve the 51 Washington Street financial security escrow release, which is number 4, final, in the amount of $282,582.23. And we're going to make that contingent upon the developer providing updated legal descriptions and related exhibits based on the as-built conditions for the deed of dedication, easements, and land swap for review and approval, and subsequently recording them in a form acceptable to the borough solicitor.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion carries.
And that is all I have.
Mr. Peters, do you want to discuss the
Oh,
Seven
no,
Tower
I
Bridge?
just lied. I have something very important that I can talk to. There is one additional legal update that came in sort of at the buzzer. You're not acting on it this evening, but I wanted you to be aware of it because you will be asked to act on it at your October 16th meeting. Seven Tower Bridge, which some of you were on council for that redevelopment. As part of that redevelopment, there were a lot of moving parts in terms of the money associated with the development, but one of the monies involved is a loan of $1 million that was made by the borough to Seven Tower, and that money ends up being used for the borough's access to parking. It's sort of a complicated financial arrangement, but when the borough loaned that $1 million, the $76 million construction loan lender required us, understandably, to be second in line in terms of our lien on the property. At that time, the borough agreed to that because of the difference in the amount of the loans. There was no real option, frankly. As part of that agreement, we also agreed that if Seven Tower Bridge needed to refinance their loan, and we knew that they would have to because there was a balloon payment. It matured, frankly, it matures November 1st of this year. So we knew that there would be a refinance. There is now a refinance. So we're being asked, and we obligated ourselves in the prior subordination agreement to also subordinate to this new loan. The things that you should be thinking about, are they up to date on their loan payments? The answer is yes. And the remaining amount of the $1 million is somewhere in the I know you looked it up, stuff like 628 range or something like that. So they've been making their payments. There have been no issues. And the original subordination agreement does state and require us to agree to the subordination this time around. There's no difference or any concern on my part to doing that. It's just that I was not willing to do it administratively. I thought that you all should actually vote on it. So at your October 16th meeting, you will see a new loan subordination agreement, and the only difference from the existing agreement is that it'll have the new lender name, and that lender is also requiring additional security from an LLC. So you'll see the new vendor name as well as this pledge from a new LLC for the borrower, but you'll see no other changes from the existing subordination agreement. So that will be on your October 16th agenda. We'll also know at that time how much of the $76,500,000 is left as well.
And our remaining is $628,550.
So basically, we're carrying forward that original loan agreement, and it will still call out what is the payment terms.
Yes. No changes to any of our payment terms. No changes even to our lien position. It's just, we have the right to approve of the new subordination agreement.
Okay.
That's all.
Any other questions? All right. So we look forward to October 16th and having that as a
That doc,
action item.
I reviewed the last subordination agreement. This one will be just as exciting for you to read. Yeah, it is some boring stuff, but it's very important.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, that concludes our legal section of our agenda. So now we get to the fun section, where we get to listen to all the activities the mayor has been involved with over the last couple weeks.
So much. This is our busy time of year. So we had our annual shredding event last weekend with the Contract and Police Department and Colwell Banker. It went great. We got visited by our state rep, Greg Scott, and we had a nice steady stream all day. But it may be our last in this location as Colwell is moving, and we are gearing up to potentially have our emergency services locations. So we kind of took it in as potentially a last one in this current setup, but we certainly look forward to seeing what the future holds for the next shredding. And then we ran our Conchi Strong Bingo event a few weeks ago. And we got a perfect night. We had wonderful guest callers from around the community and raised $1,500 for CNC. So thank you to Sarah and her team for putting that on. We usually do that in the summer, and I forget, Thomas had a surgery, so we had to push back a little bit. So we look forward to doing that again, most likely next August. And then finally, this has been on social media, but as our seniors remind me all the time, they are not on social media, so I wanted to make sure they knew that we are expecting our second. So we're very excited for that, and that's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you. As always. Councilmember Fry, do that every time. Councilmember Allen?
I'm good, thank you.
No, thank you. King Leslie? Bart?
I don't know who was out today, but we had a blast at the Philly Red October bus, and there was a really good crowd, and Yaniv was there with two of his students taking videos of everything. So it was a fun time.
Thank you for all of the support from our borough staff. When we get the call, you guys all stand up to the challenge. So thank you for fitting it into the borough. This is one of those that comes last minute, and you guys made it successful.
Especially with the streets department and the police department and the fire department.
I got nothing.
You got nothing tonight? All right. And Alan doesn't have anything tonight. And I don't have anything tonight. So with that, I will call
Public comment.
for public comment. I will call for public comment. Any public comment? Hearing no public comment, meeting is adjourned.